you might have a keyboard with a bunch of really good drum sounds in there, and you don't want to have to go to your keyboard to retrieve them all the time. So you might use Ableton software to sit there on a day where you have some time, go through all your drum kits, record your loops into Ableton, record you hitting the drum hits at different intensities and recording them into individual wave audio samples in your software, and then saving them to a folder so that you have your own drum samples from a keyboard that you might have bought or had passed down to you. So sampling is as much creating sounds as much taking from sounds. Emil is loading up a folder of the Vengeance sample library that we're going to use as a repository for where we're going to get our kick drum samples and hi-hats for today's project. And for today's project, we're going to talk about what it means to work in scene view and arrangement view in Ableton, and how you can configure both of those views of the software to perform songs live, as well as just produce beats and make songs. We're going to talk about what channels are. We're talking about audio or MIDI. We're going to pass through that since we covered a little bit about that already. Buses, which is basically, well, I have all this audio information, it's being funneled into audio software, but I really want to make sure that it's going to the right place, it's at the right level, and not ruining the entire song because it's too loud or not quiet, you know, or too thin, or has too much whatever frequency range. So busing, mixing, and organizing your workflow. Today is hopefully all about workflow. We're going to talk about sends and returns and what they mean in terms of making your productions better and getting closer to making your ideas sound like full songs instead of just loops. We're talking about the master channel and clipping and your acoustic yardstick, which we'll use to measure, well, how do I know if my song is loud enough to be played at a club? How do we measure how loud or good my song is in terms of playing it in a DJ set? Okay, so we talked a little bit about your audio source today. For our song, we're going to be using a combination of the keyboard that's here, the drum samples. Evo's going to play a little bit of bass maybe and a little bit of guitar, and we're going to make a song from scratch. We're going to talk about gain staging and signal processing because that's basically your first step towards making sure your music is going to sound good on the other end. If you can get proper gain staging, which is right here on the slide. Gain staging is a matter of making sure that all your audio sources, whether you're singing, playing guitar, playing the piano, hitting a drum pad, recording nature sounds, it's basically a matter of making sure your volumes going into your recording mixer, in our case it's this one right here, is all at maybe not the same level, but in relationship to each other, a similar level. And the reason why is when you have those audio sources being recorded into your computer, you're going to get a bunch of audio samples from your instruments that's going to be similar in size, which will end up needing to be mixed less. You'll have to tweak them less. You have to go back and change the volume of your guitar amp a lot less if you get the gain staging right. So that's the first step in your signal process, your signal chain. So source, mixer, software, right? Your source through cables, through hardware into software, okay? And your output. So once the sound is going into the software, how are you managing how it comes out? These things we're going to talk about, I put this in a list here. These are some of the things that just make your production workflow a lot easier. I find that naming channels is important. Some people will come to a session and do some recording and producing with me, and they're wondering why they, like their Ableton sets are really bulky, take up a lot of space. They don't really play well. When I hit play, they kind of glitch and you can't find their audio very easily. That's because they might not be color coding their channels. They might not be labeling stuff. And it's funny because it's like, well, I know the drums are on the left, I know the bass is next, I know the piano's there, and I know the vocals and fills are on the right hand. I know that, but what about when you get a better workflow and you're making 6 songs in an Ableton file and you know that you're gonna play them scene by scene and you're gonna perform them off of Ableton? Well, now you have 55 tracks. Which one are the drums? How are you going to organize where your synth pads are? Are you going to put all the synths together? Well, if you're going to do that, how are you going to find them? Well, color code them and name them. Muting and soloing things in order to be like, okay, well, when I'm recording music, muting and soloing is a great way to make sure that the sounds that I'm recording are noiseless and don't have vocalists' hums and clicks and sibilants. You're not getting the buzz from your digital piano. Muting and soloing individual tracks will allow you to make sure what's going in is clean and at the right level. And if it is, your mixing is half done. It's just a matter of recording the ideas. We're going to talk about level and panning and arming tracks, recording and trimming. So these are all elements of vocabulary that help you get from A to B. Are these the types of things that we want to explore, or do we want to spend less or more time on these? You guys can let me know if you want to speed through it or slow down. Just shout it out, okay? Before we go to the next slide, this is a description of what's going to exist on your software. So we're going to go to the software and we're going to come back to these things. Don't have to memorize them. You can have this PowerPoint later. But it's just a matter of the natural order of things. If it was a rock group, the initial gain staging, and if I was recording a rock band, I would probably spend most of my efforts making sure that instrument to software is like as professional and as clean and as noiseless as possible, rather than if I'm producing an EDM track. Because I got a drummer that I have to put into a room, mic separately, close off the doors, have him play it perfectly 1 or 2 times, which is going to take 5 or 6 hours. And then the electric guitarists need to wait till the drummer's done, might not even come back till the next day. And the producer will spend that night before the drummers and bassist and the guitarist, bassist, and vocalist come and lay down their tracks the next day. The producer is going to spend so much time miking each individual kick, tom, hat, noise gating all of the channels. So every mic for every drum piece is going to go into the software. So a drum kit might have from 5 to 25 mics. If, for example, Coldplay's live album, when they mic the drums, they have like 35 mics on their drum kit. Because they're wanting to catch everything. And the sound engineers are sitting on the other end tweaking the inputs so that the drums sound like you're on stage with the band. And things like noise gating, EQing, and compression. Before you're doing any mix down and arrangement and splashes and drum hits, if I was doing a rock band, I would spend my whole day doing noise gating and initial gain staging, because I want those drums to sound like you're standing in the room when you hear them. And without noise gating, without gain staging, without making sure your inputs are good, it's just going to sound like crap. And as an EDM artist, I learned so much from YouTubes of producers that I look up how to get more width out of a mix. I'll go watch these producers. 9 times out of 10, they're producers that work with big labels, and their favorite work is with rock bands and church music and non-EDM, non-electronic dance music programmed to the grid songs. So their wealth of experience is so much more than mine as a producer of EDM, because I don't got to worry about noise gating and miking, because all my instruments are coming from my keyboard or my computer. So a noise gate. So let's go into the software now. We're going to go from signal source into song idea.
I just want to interject too with the drum stuff. Again, I want to say what an exciting time we're living in, because there are amazing sample libraries out there. Even if you want like acoustic drum sounds, there is like Superior Drummer. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, or Easy Drummer. And they've taken the best kits with the best mics in the best rooms, and just amazing sounds. So that's a really exciting thing. Yeah, exciting times.
What is the website for samples?
So there are many websites that you can buy sample packs off of. Okay, so maybe this is a good time to do a little bit of plugging. So people who have sample libraries, or have, if you're a DJ, you might feel very, okay, I'll back up a little bit. It's easy to get very personal about the music you like, listen to, and produce. And musicians and DJs really like to take ownership of their music, because it defines their taste and their attitudes and their ideas. It defines them as a musician, your taste. And a person like me, I used to be all about collecting all this music, and if anyone came to a DJ set and asked me what that song was, I'd be reluctant to tell them, because I had this weird, insecure thing about if somebody else heard the song, they're gonna play it at a bigger venue than me, and somehow that'll be more important or more cool. As soon as I got over that, I started to love music a lot more. And if that sounds like you, I urge you to think about what it would be like to live in a world where musicians are all about sharing music. And you don't have to feel bad to tap on a DJ's shoulder to be like, hey, really love that song. Can you just please tell me what it is? Happens so many times. And over time, you start feeling better about it. I don't know if that happens with you guys, but you start feeling better when someone comes up to you and, yo, what was that track? I danced my ass off on that song. Like, I want to know what it is. You're going to start to feel better about it instead of worse.
Well, the other thing too is that, you know, if it's not a track that I made myself, if it's, you know, another artist's track, well, then it's not really my song.
That's right.
So if I like the song, I want to support the artist. I want to let people know who it is so they can go and buy the song too. And it just helps everyone.
Yeah,
So-
it helps spread the good music. I mean, that's why we're all doing it in the first place, right?
Interesting thing, all three of us are DJs, and we actually have some of the same music, but the interesting thing is that, you know, we could probably go to a gig with the same collection of songs and we would play them differently. You know, so it's all stuff to really share and learn from each other. Watching other DJs play and seeing what they're doing, and, you know, just watching, and if they're, you know, patient enough to kind of let you know what they're doing, that's a great way to learn. I learned a lot from watching other DJs as well. So
Great. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the production now. We're going to get into the good stuff. So that's great. So I think it's just loading. Did you copy the folder over? Okay, so it's just going to populate. It's going to populate slowly, I guess.
Oh,
But we can start with other instruments, and we'll get to it. Okay, so this is your Ableton software. Most of your digital audio workstations are going to look like this. Who uses Ableton here? Okay, anybody use Logic, Cubase? It looks a lot like this, doesn't it? It has left to right. Here's the beginning of your song. Here's the end of your song. Here are all your channels, your tracks, your drums, your bass, your guitar, your vocals. All of this stuff is here. Okay. So we can drop elements into the software to delineate another track, a new track. So if you press tab on Ableton, it goes between this view and this view. We're going to stay in this view for a second here, which is called session view or scene view, and you'll see why. We're going to set up a couple of audio channels, we'll record in some piano, and we'll go from recording things to see how I would use this recording to play it live off of Ableton versus put it towards making a song or making like a track. So I'm just going to add a new track. There's tutorials for Ableton everywhere. So I'm not going to go through the details of how to do these individual components. I'm assuming a lot of you know the basics of this. If there is something you need to go over, just tell me to stop. So we're going to add an audio track. We're going to select the beats per minute as, let's start with some hip hop or whatever. And we're going to see how your production workflow is going to morph in time. So we'll set it up at, let's say 95 beats per minute. We have a new audio channel. We know that my piano keyboard is plugged into a Firewire mixer, which is hooked up to my Ableton software. I can go into the Ableton software here and make sure that my audio input device is this Onyx, which is the name of the mixer. The output device is also Onyx because the speakers are hooked up to that Firewire mixer. I go to the input configuration and I make sure what's selected. I need to make sure the channels that my guitar, bass, whatever are plugged into are selected here as mono and stereo. Ivo, do you want to go over mono and stereo real quick right now?
sure. Well, mono, for example, this bass guitar is mono. It's just one output, right? It's going to go, you put it in the mixer, it's going to be both going to the left and right, whereas the turntable is going to play a record which is going to be recorded in stereo. You're going to have left and right pan. When you get into effects and stuff like that too, you can start with a mono signal and turn it into something stereo, maybe with some panning delay and things like that. But it's really just those two things. So.
Cool. So we've set up the piano sending a mono signal into channel 2 of my mixer. Evo's guitar is mic'd or not mic'd?
It's direct.
It's direct and it's plugged into channel
2.
No, this is the piano here.
Okay, so 1.
1. So I need to make sure 1 and 2 mono are selected instead of 1 and 2 stereo because I'm sending a guitar through 1 and piano through 2. I'm gonna have 3 and 4 also selected as mono. I might change this to stereo because I might wanna record scratching that's coming out of my DDJ, out of XLR left and right, just like in a club, and going into left and right channels onto the mixer. So I might wanna have a channel in Ableton with a stereo mix of 4 and 5 because I wanna get that scratching, and then while we're making a song, I'm gonna record it, I'm gonna save it in the software. So I might wanna have 3 and 4 stereo selected here. So we'll leave it the way it is now. We'll turn everything off. So inputs are 1 and 2 mono, 3 and 4 stereo. Do we have anything else we need?
Well, I'm using the same for the bass and guitar. I'll just
Great,
switch inputs.
so that's awesome. And
This
then
is an important part too. If you are gonna
Yeah.
buy an interface, you gotta kind of take stock of what all are you gonna plug in. For some people, they don't need a lot of channels. Maybe you're doing everything yourself. So 2-channel interface, you can record one bass, and then go and record the guitar, and then do everything kind of one at a time.
we're all together.
Whereas, you know, if you wanted to do everything together, like record a band or a performance, then you'll need an interface with more channels, or as I prefer, a mixer, Firewire USB mixer.
So I've also told Ableton to make sure that the output of the Onyx is set to 1 and 2. The only options here are mono and stereo, so we're going to leave that as a stereo mix out. And then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty about the channel strip. So this is an audio channel. I've told it that the audio from is going to be from an external sound card, which is this Firewire mixer. It's going to be coming in through channel 1. I'm going to rename this guitar. I'm going to duplicate this channel by pressing Command D. I'm going to change the input of this one to 2. I'm going to rename this one piano. I imagine I'll have a bass line, so I'll click the guitar, I'll duplicate it, make it through channel 1 because I know he's going to be using channel 1. Rename this one bass line. And there's a number of ways to do this. So I could make, right now I've set up 3 audio channels. The bass, guitar, and the piano I've decided are going to be audio. I'm going to play them, we're going to loop them and record them audio. If you wanted to make a piano a soft synth instead of a piano, you could do that. Drop in a MIDI channel and you have those 3 ready, okay? And then you can use a MIDI keyboard like this. You can use the computer keyboard if you don't have any resources. You can actually map almost anything. There's software that allows you to encode this MIDI information so that if you want to play this like a piano and have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and you want to play chords like that, you can map this with instructions. Just find a YouTube tutorial for MIDI mapping an Akai into Ableton. You'll find it, and you can map whatever you want into a MIDI keyboard.
And again, I can't stress this enough, really exciting time. You know, I don't remember until like YouTube really caught on where you could find so many resources to learn stuff. It's really amazing. You can literally go to a Google page and type in what you're trying to do if you can't figure it out, and most likely you'll find that you're not the first one trying to do that. So,
Okay, so we're gonna get into recording some music here. So we're gonna stick to the that little piano riff I played at the beginning, just because it's familiar in your minds, and we're gonna go from there. I've selected piano here. So a really important thing before I start recording, I need to determine how I'm gonna monitor my music. And just like if you were a band or a DJ at a club, you need to be able to hear the sound in your own environment separate from what's going into the computer or what's going into the club or the house. So the monitoring system for Ableton is right here. So the monitor right now is set to off for this channel. Why is it set to off? Because I know that the sound coming out of this piano is going into this mixer, and the audio signal, that information is going straight through the mixer, into the mixer's computer, onto the master, and the master sending it out through the speakers. But the beauty of digital recording is, this is why we're doing this clinic, is because the signal is also sent into the software. So what I'm gonna do is turn audio monitoring off, because I don't want the sound that, remember, we already have a copy that's going to the speakers in real time. I don't want a second signal to go into the computer, and I have monitoring turned to in or auto. The sound comes in through this channel, gets transported to this master output, which my computer has said what? We should send the outputs to what? The out of 1 and 2 of the mixer. So now we have 2 copies of this audio, one in real time and one late coming out through the speaker, and you're gonna hear 2 copies of that sound. So I'm gonna turn this monitoring off, okay? Because I have plenty of ability to hear what I'm playing in the room. And you're gonna see for soft synths and using virtual synths that, yeah, you don't need any monitoring because you're playing your note and the sound is coming out. There's no miking, there's no anything. If I played all this stuff and I had a singer to sing the final vocals over the last track, she's gonna need to what? She's gonna need to wear headphones because you don't want that sound coming through the mic and recording headphone amp mix. And monitoring becomes a lot more important. So remember that when you guys are doing your recording, that monitoring can either make your life really easy or make it quite difficult.